Hello, and welcome to the Grant Review Panel Briefing webinar for the National Health and Medical Research Council's Ideas Grant Scheme. My name is Amanda Lawrence, and my team is implementing the new Ideas Grant Scheme this year as part of NHMRC's new grant program. This webinar will take you through the peer review steps for Ideas Grants and provide you with information on the assessment criteria, as well as what is required of you before, during and after the Grant Review Panel or GRP meetings. Before we get started, I would like to thank each of you for the vital contribution you will be making as an independent expert peer reviewer over the next few months for this inaugural round of Ideas Grants. Effective peer review relies on the participation of dedicated reviewers to assess applications carefully and fairly. Although we have achieved some significant streamlining of peer review processes for the new grant program, peer review is still a big undertaking, and we recognise the time investment involved for all of our assessors. We at NHMRC and thousands of grant applicants around the country rely on and appreciate your effort and dedication to peer review. The purpose of the Ideas Grant Scheme is to support innovative research projects addressing a specific question or set of questions. Ideas Grants will provide funding for up to 5 years for creative research by investigators at all career stages, including early and mid-career researchers. We will also fund research in any area of health and medical research, from discovery to implementation. The scheme is not intended to support research where a clinical trial or cohort study is the primary objective, as we have a new funding scheme, which is our Clinical Trials and Cohort Studies scheme, which is designed to support that particular research. As this is the first Ideas Grants round, and therefore the first to be peer reviewed, it is crucial that you familiarise yourself with the Ideas Grant guidelines and the peer review guide for this scheme, paying particular attention to the assessment criteria and the category descriptors. Many of you would have been involved as an assessor for project grants in the past, and while there are some similarities with project grants, there are also some significant and intentional differences between the two schemes. The assessment criteria and category descriptors have been designed specifically to support the objectives of the new Ideas Grants scheme. Your primary role as a member of an Ideas Grants review panel is to independently assess and score each application assigned to you against the assessment criteria, using the category descriptors as a guide. The integrity of the peer review process is important to all of us. Firstly, it is vital that peer reviewers declare any personal or professional relationships or institutional affiliations that could unduly influence their review of an application. Secondly, the details of all grant applications, your reviews and your panel discussions must be kept confidential at all times and in perpetuity. And lastly, a high-quality review process depends on collegial and professional behaviour between GRP members. Should any contentious issues arise during the peer review process that require assistance to resolve, chairs and peer reviewers can obtain information and guidance from NHMRC officers. Your Secretariat will be your primary point of contact for any questions you may have about the peer review process. Please do not hesitate to contact them should you require any assistance throughout the process. NHMRC is constantly reviewing its funding schemes. This is particularly important with the rollout of the new grant program. We will seek your feedback on the peer review process after the processes are completed. This feeds into our continuous improvement considerations for future years. Once again, I'd like to thank you for undertaking peer review for this inaugural round of Ideas Grants. Your role as an assessor is critical to the success of this important new scheme. I will now take you through the steps of the Ideas Grants peer review process as outlined in the Ideas Grants 2019 Peer Review Guide. The peer review process has been streamlined for Ideas Grants. So firstly, we have grant review panel assessment only. So that means there are no external assessments for Ideas Grants. There is also no rebuttal process. So assessors are not required to provide assessor comments for the applicant to review and respond to prior to the GRP meetings taking place. And also, NHMRC will assign 4 independent assessors or spokespeople to each application. Following the conflict of interest and suitability declarations provided by all assessors, applications are assigned to panels. Peer reviewers need to provide a fair and impartial assessment against the assessment criteria for each application assigned to them as a spokesperson. Applications will be scored against the 4 criteria. So we have research quality, which makes up 35% of the overall assessment. Then we have innovation and creativity, which is weighted 25%. We have significance, which is weighted 20%. And lastly, we have feasibility, which makes up the remaining 20%. I will go through each of these criteria in more detail. Research quality refers to the quality of the project aims and the proposed research plan. This incorporates the quality of the theoretical concepts, the hypothesis, and the strength of the study design and approach. Research quality will be assessed primarily using information provided in the research proposal. The proposal must address the essential components of the research, which may include aims, background, research plan, identified risks, and timeline. Innovation generally refers to changing or creating more effective processes, products, and ideas. It is about making a change or doing something in a new way. Innovation is a multifaceted concept that encompasses a broad spectrum of activities and outcomes across the health and medical research sector. It could extend from the generation of entirely novel areas of research to driving change in current practice. Innovation requires fresh thinking and a creative approach that pursues new ideas, embraces intellectual risk, and, if successful, may lead to a breakthrough or major impact in a particular health and medical research area. Innovative health and medical research occurs in all areas of research funded by NHMRC. For the Ideas Grant scheme, innovation and creativity is defined as health and medical research that seeks to challenge and shift current paradigms and/or have a major impact on a health research area through one or more studies that creatively develop or use novel research concepts, approaches, methodologies, technologies, or interventions, propose a reinterpretation, refinement, improvement, or new application of existing theoretical concepts, approaches, methodologies, technologies, or interventions, or integrate and adapt concepts, approaches, methodologies, technologies, or interventions from other research fields or disciplines for a new purpose or in a new way. Innovation can be radical and disruptive, but often it is incremental. Innovations need not always be immediately successful and can have downstream impacts. Irrespective of the approach, innovative research should seek to have an impact. Although innovation can be considered in a commercialisation and technology frame, it equally encompasses changes to research concepts, approaches, methodologies, and interventions that may improve policy, social aspects of care, quality of life, or health processes and outcomes. Examples of areas of innovative research include, but are not limited to, those that develop or use a completely unexplored approach to solving a long-standing important challenge or obstacle, introduce a new paradigm or challenge prevailing paradigms or assumptions. It could change established practice, terminate a current practice or process, or create new fields, or it could reinterpret or readapt data for new purposes. Significance refers to the extent that the outcomes and outputs will result in advancements to the research or health area. It is not a measure of the prevalence or incidence of the health issue, for example, the number of cases, but rather it is something that addresses an area of importance to advance the research or health area. Feasibility is assessed on the appropriateness of the applicant team and their expertise, the technical resources and access to additional personnel necessary for the project. It is important to remember that there is no assessment of an individual chief investigator's or associate investigator's track record in the Ideas Grant scheme. Instead, we need assessors to review the feasibility case included within the grant proposal, where the applicant team needs to make the case for why they are the most appropriate group of researchers to undertake the proposed research. Assessors will need to consider if the applicant team has the right balance of integrated expertise, experience and training to undertake all aspects of the proposed research and achieve the project aims. Now we move on to what will be required of you before the GRP meeting. We have allocated applications and assigned spokesperson roles to each panel member. Prior to the meeting, each of the 4 spokespersons will firstly review the allocated applications against the assessment criteria, score the applications against the category descriptors, and if required, advise NHMRC of any applications where a clinical trial or cohort study is the primary objective. It's important to note that you are only required to provide scores against the criteria. You do not need to provide any comments. However, we do recommend that you prepare notes for you to present the application at the panel meeting. The 1SP and 2SP will also rigorously assess the proposed budget to ensure that personnel support packages, direct research costs and equipment requests are appropriate for the project and fully justified. The 2SP will also prepare a recommendation for the panel to leave the requested budget intact, modify the budget, or provide advice regarding specific budget requests. It is important that all scores are submitted on time to avoid delaying the rest of the peer review process. To ensure scoring is independent, we require that you do not discuss applications with other spokespersons or panel members before the panel meeting. Please refer to the Ideas Grants 2019 Peer Review Guide, in particular the assessment criteria and category descriptors, for more information on the assessment and scoring of applications. Some applicants may also be seeking funding from Cancer Australia and the Cancer Councils as part of Cancer Australia's Priority-Driven Collaborative Cancer Research Scheme, or the PDC CRS. This will be indicated within the application form, and applicants are permitted to submit an additional page within their grant proposal which outlines how they would reduce the aims and/or scope of the proposed research in order to comply with the PDC CRS. Where this occurs, the 1SP will need to prepare a recommendation for the rest of the panel for one of 2 options. They can either recommend that their scores for the full application are appropriate for the modified aims or scope of the PDC CRS application and therefore pass the same set of scores on to Cancer Australia, or recommend that different scores be provided to Cancer Australia based on the modified project. For example, the 1SP may think that the modified aims or scope of the proposed project has an adverse impact on the feasibility of the project, and they want to provide a different score that is more reflective of this. Different scores for the PDC CRS can be for a single assessment criterion, for example, just the feasibility, or for multiple criteria, for example, the feasibility and the significance, or for all 4 criteria. The recommendation of the 1SP would be considered by the rest of the panel at the GRP meeting. Once applications have been assessed, we will use the scores to create provisional ranked lists of applications for each panel. The least competitive applications will form a preliminary not for further consideration, or NFFC, list and will be provided to the respective panel members before the panel meeting. We will provide the NFFC list to panel members to review. Each panel member has the opportunity to rescue one application from the NFFC list if they believe an application warrants full review at the panel meeting. Applications not on the NFFC list will proceed to full review at the GRP meeting. Once the NFFC list has been finalised, the GRP Secretariat will release a running order for the panel meeting. Panel meetings will take place in Canberra between the 12th of August and the 20th of September, and you have been assigned a week within that period for when your panel is meeting. Each panel will meet for up to 5 days, depending on the number of applications proceeding to full review at the panel meeting. Each panel meeting will be led by a neutral and independent chair on behalf of the NHMRC. Chairs are experienced researchers or NHMRC officers with extensive peer review experience. The chair's role is to ensure NHMRC's review process is followed, that all relevant issues are taken into account by the panel, and that fair and equitable consideration is given to each application being discussed. Chairs do not score, they do not debate the merits of applications or influence the panel's decision in any way. Thank you again for undertaking peer review for this Ideas Grants round. If you encounter any issues during the peer review process, please contact your panel's secretariat, or alternatively, you may seek assistance from NHMRC's Research Help Centre.